Join us on this week's Rewind, where we take a look back at how we started with 16 teams on September 20th, 2024. And here we are, 8th of June, 2025. We're down to two. Let's do the rewind. Welcome to this week's Rewind with me, Lee G. Hugh hasn't aged and put a few pounds on. I'm back for 1 week only, I can assure you. Joining me it's as per normal, but you know what I mean. Adam, Ben, and Mohammed. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
How's it going?
So I'm going to try and do my best Hugh impression as we go through, but the reality, yeah, I'll get my son's. There you go. I've got a trendy little baseball cap.
Fair.
I've got no fake.
I don't want to see that ever again, Lee, please.
Yeah, it's I mean, Hugh does look like a strange love child of mine, but I can assure you that he isn't. So let's crack straight in. Oh, Hugh's on holiday, by the way. That's why he's not here. He's testing the strength of his budgie smugglers in Spain somewhere by now. So let's start with some rugby, because it was a pretty big weekend last weekend. So semi-finals, Leinster Glasgow. I mean, in theory, that's the Northern Hemisphere powerhouses. So who wants to kick off on Leinster Glasgow and how much we all love Leinster? Let's go to Adam and let's ask Adam how much we all love how well Leinster played in that game.
I think I messaged at full time. It's just a Leinster performance, wasn't it? Sort of the way that they played, I found it just dead. Like you can only watch a couple of Leinster games and you can see all of them. They've just got that winning down to that fine line of, yeah, we are very good and we will just keep going and going. And then they scored all their points by about the 57th minute, and they just know that Glasgow just weren't going to do much with it, bar in the last 10 or so minutes when Dobby and Tuipulotu scored. Um, I just think for Leinster, it's one of those where they're trying to put everything into it now. I think Ryan Baird mentioned in an interview how he knows how much Leinster are not very liked. And they're sort of using that as a way to push on. However, I think it would make it all the more ironic because of how just like how much they spend on their team. Like it's not even like we as Ireland fans go out to hate Leinster. It's just that they're really this game proved something to all of us. The fact how much funding they get put in, how everything has worked so well, how much they dominated a very good Glasgow team. A Glasgow team last week who I said could have put in a shock against Leinster. And then from the second minute, Sheehan scored. And from there, it just went on. Also, as well, something that I need to mention about the game. Yes, Leinster were very good. The stats were very much in their favour, 70% territory, about near enough even, give or take 20 tackles on Leinster and Glasgow for the number of tackles. Um, I just want to mention how Prendergast didn't make any conversion kicks in between the first try and I think it was the Osborne try in the 53rd minute. I when watching the game, I don't think I've just realized because it's very much at the minute for an Ireland fan. You've got these two flight halves in Crawley and Prendergast, and every time they miss a kick, you hear about it so much online. Notably Crawley if he misses rather than Prendergast, but I just sort of heard nothing really. In the Aviva Stadium, it's really weird how the wind travels. It sort of swirls. It swirls because of that sort of dome. Like it's not even a dome. It's sort of like a half open toilet seat. It sort of goes like that. But yeah, the it just sort of swirls, and it just is a nuisance for kickers. But you would expect kicking to be a bit better than that. And then at the end, I'm pretty sure it just sort of opened up and just started raining as well. So,
Mm.
at the end of the day, it was one of those Leinster wins that it's not going to be one of those that is necessarily talked about as one of their classics. It would be if they won the URC, they would talk about it a lot. However, it's all the pressures on them, and it's all the balls are in their court now. Quite literally, they're going to Croke Park. They're going to try and sell it out. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's just a weird one. I think Leinster do everything well, bar possibly lineouts this season. Lineouts really let them down this season as well. But yeah, I think, you know, as I said, it's one of those typical Leinster performances. Prendergast played well by the kicks, and Jody Barrett played very well as well. You know, that's just a Leinster sum up of the season, to be fair.
Prendergast actually make any tackles at all?
I read a stat
And
yesterday. He was at 0%. I don't know if that finished at 0%, but he was at 0% midway through the
Let's
second half, I think.
let's have a look if I can find it. But I don't think
I'm-
he's not the he just isn't. I think with Prendergast, and the issue with him is, especially this year, because it's his breakout year, is that everyone's put in so much pressure on him. And I think I've said this probably every week I've been on this podcast, but I call it the Harry Byrne effect. We're gonna have some random Leinster fly half come out next year who they're gonna say is the next big thing, and then he can't do something like kick or pass, and then that's how he gets shuffled down the pecking order. I think Prendergast really needs that defensive shock, and I think he's going to get that against Georgia in the summer, and that's what we need, you know, to roughen him up a little bit. But his tackling is pretty lackluster.
Well, to be honest, if Leinster are running at you and the chances of you having the ball and planning any move at all, we go, do you know what? When we've got the ball, we'll isolate the outside half and we'll run at the outside. That's just not going to happen, is it? Let's
Oh
be
no,
fair. You're not. That's not going to happen. So,
not at all.
but Ben, from an Irish, from a Scottish point of view, then, um, I know you're best friends with Glasgow because apparently you don't do rivalry between Edinburgh and Glasgow. You all just snuggle down in the same little bed and go, "Oh, we love each other." So, how did you view that game, mate?
I think as soon as Hector Venter took the kickoff and went into contact and penalty was given, I think I was like, what was that? 30 seconds in, I was like, I think that's probably it. Glasgow just weren't set up for it, and I think there was two players I was particularly disappointed with. I don't think it's come to a surprise to any of you, but George Horn and Adam Hastings did not have good games yesterday whatsoever. Hastings was hooked at half time. TJ moved to 10. Stafford Waddell came in to go into the centre partnership with Tuipulotu. I don't think the front row can come away from that game with any particular, fond memories. They were all hooked at 44 minutes. Leinster just played really, really well, and I think Gibson Park in particular yesterday, those skip passes, I think the second try and I think the fourth or the fifth try when it went across the middle of the park, that's just world class nine play. And I think only Dupont and Gibson Park are capable of playing like that at the moment. Without Gibson Park, I think Leinster would have probably struggled a bit more yesterday. But Dan Sheehan again, a hooker, incredible player. He's up there, probably best hooker in the world right now. Yeah. Take nothing away from Leinster, they played very, very well yesterday. Glasgow just didn't show up. Whether it was part Leinster, just grind them down, which is their kind of modus operandi. But Glasgow just kind of rabbit in the headlights. They'd had a real opportunity yesterday. There was a lot of players missing yesterday. Doris van der Fleer, Ringrose Henshaw, Hugo Keenan, they're all sort of up there watching in the gods in a sparsely populated Aviva Stadium, which I'm sure we can talk about the atmosphere later in comparison to Loftus. But Glasgow I think they missed out on an opportunity yesterday. I think Hugh Jones, and I did say this last week, without Hugh Jones, that midfield pairing doesn't work as well. Because the problem is you're moving TJ up to 12 and you lose that playmaker at 10 because I don't think Adam Hastings is good enough as a starting 10. And then you don't have Jones off the outside of Tuipulotu. Tuipulotu went to 13. I think there was comments made yesterday. It was in order to kind of neutralise Geordie Barrett. It didn't work. Glasgow's plan A, and I think their early plan A was to target Prendergast in contact off the first phase. Yeah. And it worked a little bit, but it didn't work enough. And the width play yesterday wasn't good enough. And George Horn he had a couple of knock-ons and his confidence went. Hastings' kicking wasn't great. His confidence went. And that was it, really. But a strong Leinster performance. Can't take anything away from them.
Oh no, I do like to slag Leinster a lot, and some of the comments would be like, oh, Adam's bashing Leinster again, but I think the biggest compliment I can probably give them is the fact that I would call it a typical boring Leinster position because they did just drive them down, and as you said, Ben, first 30 seconds penalty, you knew that that was in their head 1-0 them in the middle, like in their like in the Battle of the Minds. Sheenan goes over in the second minute, and you just know, here we go, this is going to happen. Everyone knows what's going to happen. It doesn't matter what type of setup they have. They just produce Ireland players like it's it's just easy work. But you know yeah, Gibson Park is one of the best scrum halves in the world, and also Sheenan is one of the best hookers in the world. And those are two players in the modern game where they're vital. Like Sheenan is almost like having two or three back rows on the pitch at the same time. How much workload he does, and how quick he is, and how he runs off the back, and runs into contact as well. It's just typical Leinster fashion. It's just whether or not they can go into next week with the same umph, with a very big balls pack in front of them that could target Prendergast. Do you know what I mean? Like there is that sort of pressure on Prendergast now. Is that pressure on Leinster? As I said, I'm going to probably repeat it through. I think the ball is in Leinster's court, and they've been in this position before. So
I think if Hanneke makes it or not, because I think there's question marks over him. I think he's the player that the balls would be highlighting to target. I could see you shaking your head, Mohammed, but I think he would the player you'd have kind of number one target for Prendergast to make contact with. But if he's going to be out, I think he's going to be a big loss, a very big loss for the Bulls next weekend.
Yeah, I haven't seen any reports, but it looked bad when he went off which is also an issue for our test team, because he was just about to break through. He was about to break through last season. He also got hurt. From a neutral perspective, I was hoping for a slightly more competitive game. Leinster obviously scored early, but then Glasgow came back with that nice little kick through, and we thought, okay, yeah, here we go. But then, yeah, game wasn't as interesting for me from that perspective. So you guys touched on most of the notes that I had. I was like, yeah, atmosphere in the stadium was better than last week. However, it was still not so great. TJ had a good game. Tom Jordan, if anyone's wondering, had a good game, but still couldn't really impose himself. Pendergrass's defense, bad again. Yeah. What's interesting for me is that as a South African supporter, I actually don't dislike Leinster. I do admire them a lot, just like I admire Toulon and a handful of other French teams. Exactly how Leinster got to the point that they are so dominant, I think I need to do more research, and you guys can inform me. So I've been seeing different sort of breakdowns as it relates to that, especially on social media sort of message boards and stuff like that. Adam Hastings, I wanted to give him a chance. Remember the Sharks burst him in the Challenge Cup final last year, and he didn't do so well for Gloucester then as well. So he didn't impress me in this game in particular. I can't say that I've watched him a lot this season. I think those are my thoughts as it relates to that. I wanted Glasgow to win, but I knew it was a long shot.
So just to clarify for everyone, so Ben's not be for those of you watching on YouTube, Ben's not being rude, but Ben, point out where you're watching the tennis right now. Just point to us where you're watching the tennis. So that's why Ben for those of you listening, every now and again, Ben kind of leans back from the camera, has a little look over to his right and goes, oh, and then comes back in because the tennis final is on. So yeah, I mean, for me as a neutral as well, I watched the first 10 minutes and I thought, hello, this could be tasty. This could be a bit ding dong. This is what you want from big games. You want that back and forth. You want 10 bells knocked out of each other. And then the rest of the game did just fall a little bit flat. There were moments of, okay, I like that. That's tidy. But if you were having a cup of tea, you're not spitting your tea out anywhere, and shouting and stuff. It was just. So I know it's a very Leinster way of playing. I think everyone else needs to work out how to beat boring rugby. I think that's our jobs now as competitors.
Well,
I'm sure if you're an actual Leinster supporter, this game was fantastic, because when Sharks roll over teams, I enjoy every 80 minutes of it. So, but for everyone else, I don't think it was such a entertaining afternoon.
I think like if Leinster played more entertaining rugby, they'd be able to sell out the Aviva. Do you know what I mean? Like for the armchair fan, I reckon if it's sort of like the issue that the Ireland rugby team are having at the moment. I think if they were playing more entertaining rugby, when you think of like the really successful like rich teams in Europe come by, like your Toulons when they sort of first broke through with all the money, they had amazing away support that would have rivaled everyone, but they would have only been like a season or two like in the spotlight because they played exciting rugby. I think Leinster just it's cohesion. To bring back one of Caelan's words, it's cohesion ball, and it's the way that rugby is going to get played now. It's sort of like that they say that Pep Guardiola's ruined football. It's the same with sort of the way the Leinster tactic is going, hide the ball under your shirt and just shovel and shovel and shovel and shovel. You're gonna get 5 points at some point. You're not gonna get 7 with Prendergast kicking, but you shovel and you shovel and you shovel.
Unfortunately, I'm old enough to still be. I was playing the game when we literally had a penalty move where remember we used to have a line of three way back in the 80s, and the first man would catch a ball, he passed it to the second one, and the second one would literally stick it up his jumper. And then everyone would disappear and everyone would go, "Where's the ball?" And then you take it out and pass it. So sticking it up your jumper genuinely used to be a tactic that was I think we only got penalized a couple of times for it, but it was good fun. So sometimes sticking it up your jumper can be good fun. But
I think the thing that surprises me, like this is Leinster's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's certainly their fourth semi-final in a row. Obviously, the first three they lost, and they've not won a trophy in 4 years. Why are the fans not turning up?
It's probably because they haven't won a trophy in 4 years.
But it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Like they signed Jordy Barrett, and that's probably the trophy that they're going to get. But I have like something on Blue Sky lined up if they lose it, that Scott Barrett would win a URC with Connacht. So it's just for Leinster fans. I also saw like it could have been. I don't know how many home games they've had in a row, and I don't know if it's due to the URC scheduling, but when you think about it, it was the quarterfinal, 2 weeks in between the quarterfinal. Was it? It wasn't even 2 weeks. It was like 2 weeks between like but the last 3 weeks it's been quarterfinal, semi-final, final, all three in Dublin. Dublin's not that not that cheap of a place, but you would think that the Leinster fans would pack it out, or they would have like this drive, even to get like mini rugby teams in the stadium packing it out, some type of rugby, actually go into the community and do it. But it's really confusing. But I think it's almost like a victim of their almost success but non-success. Because they're not guaranteed a trophy on the weekend, they won't sell it out. And I think it's possibly poor scheduling on the URC part, and I think it's also that sort of timid sort of stress about the Lions tour coming up and also being in the Aviva and getting that pitch like spick and span for that. But
it's 6 days between the final and the opening test, isn't it? Well, not the opening test, but the first game of the tour before they tour against Argentina on the Friday, isn't it? So
yeah, it's the same with the Premiership final as well, and the top 14 finals even after that. So
top 14 finals the week after the first Lions game, because they only go into their 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5 next weekend, don't they? So theirs is what, 26th of June, 27th of June it'll be their final. So
it's in around then. So they've got it's a pretty weird tight schedule, and I think the Lions tour being slapped in there as well doesn't really help the breathability of fans, because I think the tickets start from like €20 for the final. I think when I went, it was about €25, Ulster versus Leinster, and you got your own seat ticket, but it was that sparsely. You just sat where you wanted.
Could move around.
Yeah, you just sat where you wanted. It was just a bit of a weird one, but I thought the RDS redevelopment doesn't help it either.
So, Mohammed, I just want to bring it back to you for a second, right? So, as a South African, was there anything on that pitch yesterday that you looked at that you thought, do you know what, the Bulls need to be worried or any South African team need to be worried about what's happening here today? Was there anything there that you think, oof, that could play on a weakness?
Yeah, a couple of things, especially Dan Sheehan is pretty good. I wasn't actually before the season exactly quite aware. I think I rate Kelleher, but I didn't realize Sheehan was that good. I think it's going to be tough for the Bulls next week because it's such a short turnaround. They have to fly across. They did have quite a interesting sort of energy sapping game against the Sharks. We'll get to it later. So, but there's holes. So my feeling right now is it's 60-40 to Leinster in terms of they're favorites against the Bulls, but they're not huge favorites. The Bulls will target certain things and they'll be on their players in terms of rest protocol and traveling and stuff like that. So, I mean, Snyman coming off the bench, I think it would be incredibly interesting to see what the Bulls pack can do, having flown over against the Leinster pack. Yeah. So, and then from a Glasgow's perspective, I am a bit concerned as to like, will we see them in a URC and or EPCR semi-final with all the changes coming through, and sort of like the restructuring of the team? Because I mean, they're losing a bunch of guys who are not Scottish qualified, but they're also losing TJ to the Premier League. So there's that issue. So
Well, the view in Wales yesterday, just to round up on Glasgow, the view in Wales was up until then if Franco was going to come and be the new Welsh coach, which is why we all believed that the announcement had been delayed and delayed and delayed because he's got another week. The feeling on social media, certainly on Saturday, was maybe that's not what we actually need for an international coach. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see where Glasgow go with all of that on there. So, yeah, okay. So Leinster through to the final, quite convincing, 37-19. Then we hit Bulls and Sharks. And just in terms of the spectacle and the atmosphere, the feeling around that game. So, Mohammed, what did you make of that game? Talk us about the outside of it first, the feeling and all of that, and then talk about the rugby.
I was excited for the game. I felt like we were underdogs, but we could maybe pull something off. The atmosphere was great. There was, I wrote this down, 47,000 people, 47,214. Yeah, we gave it a go. It was far more close than the previous semi-final. But unfortunately, we didn't take our chances. It was very interesting because we beat them in a Currie Cup semi-final, which we shouldn't really have lost, but they weren't taking it that seriously. That Currie Cup semi-final was basically the super, I was about to say Super Rugby, the URC teams having their preseason somewhat disrupted and using it like as a preseason game. So the Bulls didn't take it as seriously as we did. The game actually came down to the fact that we kept tackling Johan Goosen, which is a tactic Leinster might want to employ next week. And then he was so hurt that he couldn't actually take a penalty kick that was reasonably kickable. It was quite far away. And then Boeta Chamberlain, who had just left the Sharks, for the Bulls, stepped up to kick it, but he unfortunately missed the kick. He's not that good at kicking, but he is very good at passing. So we went with that, and then we were lucky to beat them twice in the round robin stage of the URC this season. Well, one game we outplayed them, and then the next game they really should have won. But the game they really should have won, they had a lot of chances and they didn't take them. Whereas the same thing happened here with the Sharks, because the Bulls started really well, but then they had a lot of ill discipline and our physicality did fade towards the end. We did try sort of a tactic of like saying Lorenzo Julius was going to be on the bench, but then we last minute we swapped it out for Manu Tutuka, Vincent Tutuka's younger brother, and who actually came on and made quite an impact. He actually came on at halftime, not somewhere during the game. So those factors, and effectively when the Bulls went back to 15 men, and it was 15 versus 15, and it was the last 20 minutes, that's when the Bulls shifted into what they were preparing for all season. Is that my view is that they were focused on winning the URC because they hadn't done it before. This is going to be their third final. They lost it to the Stormers in the first season. They didn't make the final in the second season, and then they lost it to Glasgow at Loftus in last season, so the third season. So my view is that the Bulls were like, look, we have the squad. It's got good depth, but what we're going to do is we're going to try and win the URC and see how far we can go with the EPCR tournaments. And it worked out for them because they're peaking at the right time. And that last 20 minutes is the fruition of all their preparation. They want to do that. And they're not even playing like boring 10-man old style Bulls Heineken Meyer rugby. They're actually playing where they take the contact and they offload, and they're a really good team. And what excites me is that this final, as much as I wanted the Sharks to get to the final, this final is the best two teams in the tournament from my perspective.
100%. It's the finalists that should be there, really. Based on their performance throughout the season.
Yeah. So,
Mohammed, quick question: what did you make of Andrew Brace? Because obviously they were down to 13, and then went back to 40, and then went back down to 13 again. That sort of 32 to 40-minute period. Andrew Brace. I'm not going to criticise him, but I'm just interested in your view on. He looked like he was going to give a penalty try, and then he didn't. It looked like the touch judge had a word with him and say he's not close enough to the line, because he looked like he was about to run under the post. He turned to go towards the post, then he didn't, and he just gave the penalty advantage. And that was when they were 13 men at that point. Did you have a view on that at all? Because I thought that was interesting. It's like he'd had his mind changed by his assistant.
Yeah, that was a bit of a contentious issue, but I sort of swept it away. I was just like, let's just stay focused and keep playing. These things happen. Similar to how we drew with Munster last week, we had opportunities to finish the game off, and the Sharks in general had opportunities to get back into this game. So the referee might have made a sort of contentious decision there, but similar to when we lost to the Stormers in Cape Town, the referee had one sort of contentious decision there at a ruck time, but then people were complaining on the message boards about it. But I was thinking like we had 3 other opportunities to actually finish the game off. The Sharks are going to have to regroup now from a Sharks perspective. We had a good season from my perspective, not maybe because of how many Springboks we have, what people expect of us, and we've struggled with execution. So we're going to have to see what we can do there in terms of maybe changing the coaching staff, maybe bringing Johan Ackerman in, sort of a different voice, that type of thing, or sticking with it and maybe blooding some guys that can make an impact in the Currie Cup. Because I mean, like arguably, our best player was Ethan Hooker this season, and then Apelele Fase, he's played really well. I am deeply concerned about one of my all-time favorite players, Lucanio Am. His form hasn't been great. Andre Esterhuizen has played quite well for us since he got back from England. The thing is that Andre Esterhuizen left, and he was a very two-dimensional player, and he's come back from Harlequins, and he's got a lot more skills and stuff like that. So I wish the Bulls good luck. Kanan Moodley, again, excellent shooting out the line, shutting down our attacks and stuff. The Bulls put us under pressure a lot with their scrum, and we held on to an extent. There was actually a highlight package that I watched just before we started recording from SuperSport of like all the scrums. So we didn't get annihilated in the scrum, but we were definitely under pressure. Also, one interesting factor is that Dion Slabber was on the bench for us, but he is from the Pumas, and he was on loan to a URC team. First, he was on loan at the Bulls, so he actually played definitely an EPCR game. I don't know about the URC game for the Bulls. So he was not on the losing side. So I wonder how he's feeling about. Well, it wasn't his decision. I think the Bulls had him in as injury cover, and then when they didn't quite need him anymore, he then decided, okay, I'll go to the Sharks because they probably will need me. And he was able to play. So the thing about the Bulls also is that they've been building this team for a while, and the point I was trying to make for a while is that they're very similar to, they've got wealthy benefactors. They've got 2 really wealthy people in South Africa paying sort of for the team. So I think they're probably, I suspect they're spending more than what they generate, but these investors are happy to do it. That's now Johan Rupert and Patrice Motsepe. But the thing about the Bulls is that they remind me of the Chelsea football team if the owners stayed out of the way of the manager. So because Jake White knows what he's doing, he's somewhat controversial, but the thing with Jake White is that if you let him do what he wants to do and innovate, he'll probably win. And what the Bulls are doing is they allow Jake White to build this team of all these like 20 mid-20s guys who are physically dominant and stuff like that. So they have good depth. Most URC South African teams have players, but the Bulls have the type of better squad balance that bodes well for what Jake White called the URC is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So yeah, they are reaping the reward of their investment. Yeah. Not to say that the team doesn't have weaknesses. All teams have weaknesses. It's impossible not to have any weaknesses, but they've got a solid squad. Way more balanced than the Sharks.
So, Ben and Adam, so you're looking at it as a neutral then. I mean, is there a little bit of jealousy? So, Ben, I'm going to ask you first about the atmosphere, and are you jealous of the atmosphere? And then, Adam, I'm going to ask you about did you laugh when oh crikey, the scrum half
Jaden Hendricks.
yeah, nuts up the kick. So because the entire social media of Ireland seems to have turned to Munster for a couple of minutes here. So Ben, atmosphere, the view of the game, your thoughts on the game?
I grossed in the group chat yesterday, and Hugh quickly came back and said that Dan Bigger said that's one of the most intimidating environments he's played, and he's played everywhere, hasn't he? Pretty much every big stadium across the world, north and south. I just love atmosphere when it's just so. It was electric yesterday. You could feel it coming through your television, which was the complete opposite of what was going on in the Aviva, and you could just see how much it meant to those Bulls fans. They've been to 2 finals, they've lost 2 finals. Whether one was in Cape Town, one was there, at Loftus last year. And this is the third opportunity for them to go. It is a way. If I had the opportunity to switch grounds, I'd want it at Loftus, just because I think it will be a better spectacle. I think the atmosphere will be far better. I think the stadium's better for club rugby. It's slightly smaller. It's packed in. It's old school. I just think there's something about that atmosphere yesterday just really, really kind of like electrified my viewing of that, and it just adds that extra 10% to your enjoyment. Just watching a game like that, the spectacle, the fireworks, the fans going mad, the players celebrating. It just didn't. I mean, even Dan Sheehan yesterday scoring his tries for Leinster, there was a bit of a fist pump and an arm kind of like, in the air, but that was about it. It just didn't feel like, it just felt like very much like just a routine win, whereas that semi-final yesterday between the Bulls and the Sharks, it seemed like everything was left out on the pitch. And David Creel's try, to obviously get it outside of reach and distance of the Sharks yesterday was a fantastic, kind of phase play, sort of 65th minute, I think, wasn't it? And Willie LaRue, I bang on about him, but I feel like he's been playing forever. I did look him up yesterday. He's in line for his 100th cap this summer. He's been a Springbok since 2013, and he just seems to get better every year. He's vintage now. He's like a good bottle of wine that's been left in the cellar for 15 years. He just comes in, turns up. He doesn't seem to make. I think he made one kick to touch, outside the 22 yesterday on, but he is just a stalwart of a fullback, and I just absolutely love him. He's just a fantastic player. I really enjoy watching him, and I think he's one of the keys for the Bulls next week, and it's how he plays. He was the reason the Bulls beat Leinster in the semi-final last year. It was LaRue's kicking that won that game for them. It'd be interesting to see if he kind of adopts that same role next week in Dublin.
Go on then, Adam. So tell us how much for a couple of minutes the whole of Ireland turned red.
I've never felt so stand up and fight in my life. It was sort of like one of those slips, and you went, "Oh yes!" And then you sort of like
instant.
It was like after last week, it's just saying, rugby needs that. Rugby also needed that as well. It was sort of like the yin and yang effect, wasn't it? It was sort of like balance now. It's grand. No one's ever going to talk about it again because I'm sure.
And it led to a try. That was the main thing. It led to a try.
Oh yeah, it led to a try.
A brilliant try. A lot of work to do, but it was a fantastic try.
It was a very good try. But to touch on the sort of atmosphere, Leinster's game sort of reminded me of Pro 12 of old. Pro 12, and it was the Rabba Direct Pro 12. It wasn't even like the Guinness Pro 12. Rabba Direct Pro 12, and it was like a random Friday night, and it was sort of you could have expected rain, but in South Africa it felt like the URC. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the URC, it has to be that spectacle. It has to have that sort of oomph, that flair to it. Not to say that Glasgow and Leinster, they have the talent on the pitch, but like you look at the South African teams, like Mohammed said, like how balanced Bulls are, or on paper the Sharks should be so much more of a balanced team. You've got stories there. You've got the Sharks that were always sort of beating teams in the second half, and as their luck probably ran out in the semi-final. You've got the Bulls, who I thought throughout the season they would probably be my favourites to win it. Whereas it's in Dublin next week. We don't know with the travelling, but it felt like that's what the URC needs to be. And that's what almost we need to, as I think all of the teams in Ireland need to focus on now, is to get that atmosphere back. And get that sort of excitement back about the league, and also rugby in general, because it's gone way too corporate now. And I think that corporateness is shown through Leinster's success, yet their attendance is dwindling. So, I think that's the route to take.
I think the disappointing thing with attendances in South Africa is they're great against other South African teams, and then from my point of view, Scarlets turned up and it felt like they were two grannies and a pie cellar, just because the stadium's massive. So you can still put, 15, 20,000 in there and it still looks half empty sort of thing. So, yeah, it does kind of feel like.
Yeah, that's the other edge of the sword. We have such big stadiums that when we don't really fill it out on TV, it might not seem that atmospheric. That being said, I was at the Stormers game more recently, and they didn't open up the top part, only the bottom part, and it looked decent on TV, but it felt great in the stadium. Quick thoughts on Hendricks. Both Hendricks brothers slipping. One slipped trying to take a penalty or conversion. There was some poor kicking. But what's interesting is that none of the Bulls, even though the Bulls kicking wasn't 100%, they did miss penalties and conversions. None of their guys slipped, so they must have selected the right boots. Studs, I'm not even making a joke. Like maybe they did, because I mean it was quite slick. And Valerio, we're talking about a 35-year-old guy who might not. It's like the game plan. They know we can't use this guy as a tackling bag, that kind of thing. But the fact that the Bulls are smart enough to use Willie to his strengths, because I mean, this guy broke through at Boland. I forgot about that part. I thought he broke through at Griquas. So he basically worked his way up the South African system. I can't remember what.
He played for the Cheetahs for a good while, didn't he? In Pro.
Yeah. And he broke through like way before. I was trying to see now which Varsity Cup, because Varsity Cup is actually now like where people break through, and then they go to like Griquas and that kind of thing. So there was no Varsity Cup. So he went Boland, and then he went upper level to Griquas, although Boland and Griquas now are quite similar. And then he went to Cheetahs, and then from the Cheetahs he went to
Japan.
First the Sharks for short stopover, then Japan, then Wasps. Then back to Japan, and now at the Bulls, and then his contract's up this into the season, and Bath are throwing money at him, and then the Bulls threw more money at him just to stay. But so yeah, we have to commend him. He's still got a few games left for the. I'm sure he'll play a few more games for the Springboks. Will he make the World Cup? We'll have to see. But the way Rassie Erasmus manages and rotates and still able to win so many games is just excellent. So yeah, excellent.
I think all this video, the radio chat, I'm going to have to speak about the former Ulster player Marcel Coetzee and the fact that he's also 34 and still making those type of hits and still making those type of plays as well. He's unbelievable in that sense as well. I think all those sort of fine wine players in that Bulls team really make them with that healthy balance of the talent coming through. Yeah, I just have to give my plaudits to Marcel Coetzee. He was just a great rugby player.
Okay. Well, we'll park that game there. It was the better of the two games to watch, and we'll have a little look at the elite team in just a moment before we preview the final and we look at that. But before we do, so I've got pod news, and I know Hugh doesn't do this because he don't. So I just wanted to let everyone know where we are as a pod, and there's some new podcasts to listen to and a couple of new podcasts to come. So the first one, if you're a connoisseur of world rugby and you're one of those people that kind of goes, do you know what? I don't care where it is as long as it's good rugby. Well, we've got a new pod for you called the Mall Street Journal, which is all about the MLR. And I'm going to be honest, that came after about an hour of me and Hugh banging ideas back and forth, and we just went, should we just ask AI? And that was like the third one that came out, and we went, okay, yeah, the Mall Street Journal, I like that one. So yeah, that one's going to be up and ready in the next couple of weeks. And then, so for those of you that don't know, like the history of the Rewind and the Rewind coming out of RAP. RAP is a Welsh regional rugby appreciation podcast, which is kind of where it started. And the whole point of RAP was that it had one presenter from each of the 4 regions, same as we do here. We'll try and have like a balance. You can be as biased on your team as you want. It doesn't matter, because there'll be 3 others that'll tell you you're being a dickhead. So we kind of wanted to do that and replicate that in South Africa and Ireland. So that's what we're going to do now. Now, Ben, if you want to try and do it in Scotland with 2, we're going to struggle, but I'm more than willing to give it a go, mate. I'm more than willing to give it a go. But for now, I'm going to focus on South Africa and Ireland.
I think that's fair enough. I think based on the YouTube comments that never mentioned either Edinburgh or Glasgow and all focus on Ireland and South Africa, I think there's an audience in those 2 countries over Scotland quite significantly. So yeah.
So what you're saying is if enough Scotland listeners put a comment
Slag
on
me
that
off.
says, yeah, if we can do that.
Do you want me to generate something? Blair Kinghorn is a very good rugby player.
Yeah. Ben's comments regarding yes, put all of that below. If we can get enough comments, Ben says he'll do a Scotland pod. So Mohammed and Adam. So let's do Adam first, because we've kind of got half of a presenter team together, and maybe a couple more. But if anybody wants to throw a couple of names together for, probably Connaught is the one we're gonna struggle with, isn't it?
Possibly. I'd say that Caelan is probably the most well-contacted person in the Irish rugby circles, so we'll try and he found me, to be fair, so we'll find something.
Are we allowed to mention Scully's name on the podcast? Isn't he like Voldemort? Oh, the Leinster supporters are going to be so upset.
Persona non grata.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the bit we're struggling with the Irish one is a name. So if anybody wants to suggest a name again down below there somewhere, the one bit that we're not allowed to use is
anything involving any
Leinster.
type of the 3 proud provinces
plus Leinster.
We all hate
Leinster. No. So we're very much going to have a podcast with at least one pro Leinster presenter, just to keep everybody happy. So everyone that types and gets really angry that somebody said something against Leinster, we'll have someone
to balance it out.
Yeah,
as long
exactly.
As you're friendly and not artificial intelligence.
maybe that's the problem. All of Leinster's fans are AI generated cats. That's where they are. Okay, so we need a name and we need a Connaught presenter as well. So in South Africa, Mohammed. Now I'm quite liking the fact that we've got 3 teams with animal names and the Stormers. So I'm thinking like the Rugby Animal or something like that, and the Stormers. So hang on, Adam's had a thought. Go on.
A storm at a zoo.
A storm at a zoo. No,
No,
you'd have been better off staying quiet, mate.
Shit. Okay, yeah.
Let's have them vote at the bar. We need to generate more interaction in the comments. I'm sure our viewers will come up with some interesting stuff, and listeners. But yeah, and the viewers in the comments. We're going to see a lot of stuff related to braai and biltong and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of this is going to be you explaining to me what on earth it means. But I'm more than happy to go down that route, mate. But we need presenters, don't we? We need presenters from South Africa, either based in South Africa or based in the UK or anywhere around the world, apparently, because that's the world we're in at the minute. So if you're up for it, then this is the place for you to come. Just get in touch with us, drop us an email, drop us a message, or just shout some abuse on YouTube and say, I can do better than that, guys. And yeah, we'll we'll be down for it. Yeah. Maybe that's the Irish, the name of the Irish pod. I can do better than that, you bunch of tossers. It might go, it might roll.
Are we gonna put
So,
the email in the comments in the description in the video?
yeah, because I'll be honest, I've forgotten it.
Yeah.
I can try and give it out,
Mm.
but there's a strong chance I've forgotten it because I don't really use. Oh, hang on, Adam's had another one. Go on, mate.
So we've got on the ball. So why don't we do a complete opposite off the ball? We do a rival podcast and we go straight for them. I think that's what we should go. I'm looking at you, Brian O'Driscoll.
Fantastic.
That's in the target way up there, man. Right. Okay. Let's see what the reaction to that one is.
Yeah, I mean, I
Right.
called out Martin Keown last week, so it's only fitting that that Adam call out Brian O'Driscoll this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, keeping
Bod.
it real. Right. Before we do a quick preview of the final, I just want to share this with you guys. So this has come out this week. This is the Elite 15, essentially the team of the season. So I mean, it's quite balanced, to be fair. There's a good mix of everyone apart from Italian teams in there. So, who wants to have a look at the front row? Is there anything in there that jumps out at you guys and you can go, ooh, that's debatable. I'm gonna go no then.
I
I
think
don't think so.
Ben, let's shoot to you. You haven't been in.
I think if we're looking at the whole squad, I'm just a bit Craig Casey over Jameson Gibson Park. Maybe that's the one I'd be a bit.
Mm.
I think Casey's
Yeah.
played more URC games.
But I'd
in
say, but based on
general.
URC performance, then yeah, I
Yeah.
think Casey gets the nod. Yeah.
I think Osborne at 15 is a bit weird because there's more 15s that actually played 15 consistently in the URC than Osborne. Like if he was like at 12, you'd have kind of been like okay at it. But the fact that Blair Murray's at 11 really confuses me as well.
Yeah,
It's
that does actually.
very,
Yeah.
it's very bizarre. It's sort of like a tick box team. Like is it based on the top 100? Is it the same AI thing that
I'm also wondering that because we don't know exactly how it was selected. As it relates to the front row, it's very interesting to see Jan Hendrik Wessels, who can also play hooker, is the selected starting loosehead. And I think he's earned it. The Bulls have been very consistent with their front rows and their packs and stuff, especially in the URC. They did rotate somewhat for EPCR, but they've also been quite lucky in terms of not getting injuries and stuff like that. Walco Low at tight head is an obvious choice. I mean, even Vincent Koch from us didn't play that much. Well, maybe play as much as Wilcolo, so I can't argue that. And then obviously our colleague Hugh has constantly reminded us that soon to be Springbok Manus van der Merwe, former Cheetah, will has had a really good season. Yeah. So yeah, that's the front row for me.
See, I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, we've got Marnus at hooker. We've got Tad Byrne, who technically wears the red of Munster, but in his heart, he knows he's still a Scarlets player. We've got Jack Morgan at 6, which technically he's a 7, but he's played more 6 this year. Again, he may be wearing black, but in his heart of hearts, he knows he's a Scarlet. And then we've got Blair Murray at 11. So that's 4, and I'm reckoning that's a Scarlets dominated side, boys. Do you know what I mean? I'm reckoning Scarlets got.
Yeah, it's so interesting how every week there's a team of the week, and I think it was for the Champions Cup this year. We lost against Bordeaux quite heavily, but we still had like 3 players in the team of the week based on like player performance and like statistics wise. But and they actually like made that known. They were like, here, this is why they're in it. But like they sort of just released this Elite 15 and they were kind of like, here you go. We don't know what the requirements were. Here's just a bunch of good players that you'd be like, yeah, fair enough. A couple of ones that you're like, in the positioning, but I find it just dead interesting.
I think they have. You know when? Go on, Ben. Go on.
I think, like Adam said, is it a team based on individual positions and the players they deem best in that position, or is it a team based on cohesion and balance? I don't know. Is that Tom Farrell that's at 13 there? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, it's Tom Farrell. Yeah,
Uh,
13.
Not sure.
Is he
There's been some
was he the
better
best
outside
13?
centres.
Yeah.
Look, these are
It's
all quality players. It's just a bit ambiguous
a-
as to how they were selected. I think it's probably top 100 and or how much you've played in that position. But even that doesn't quite make sense with Jamie Osborne there, because I think of Jamie
Yeah.
Osborne more of a 12 type thing.
12.
Well, you played there yesterday in the centre, didn't it? Centre yesterday. Stopped my head, didn't
Yeah.
you? So
He played outside centre yesterday, right? Yeah.
yeah, you played 13. Yeah.
So yeah.
Having a utility back like that and sticking him in at 15 when he's played more at centre, you'd think that he could probably push into that Tom Farrell position. You have Blair Murray there, stick him at 15, and then you have a winger space open, for an actual winger that's played quite well. And I'm not saying this because I'm an Ulster fan, but Jacob Stockdale this year has had a very good year. I just had to get him in there.
You're not getting any Ulster players in that team this season.
No.
That's
Yeah, I know
not gonna
that. Yeah,
happen. Yeah.
The Sharks made the semi-final. We only got one player.
I know. Exactly.
Yeah, it is.
But it's
really
fair.
weird.
None of our team selection was all over the place. So yeah.
So I've got a random kind of completely different way that I think they've chosen this. I think they've just gone through all of the photos that they've done at the start of the season. So these are obviously the photos that they've done at the start of the season. And they've gone, let's just find who's got the weirdest right arm. Let's just find who's got the weirdest left arm. Blair Murray appears to have his fingers molded together. Craig Casey looks like he's straining to take a dump. And RG Snyman's just gone in and gone, I'm not doing anything fancy. Take the photo now. Do you know what I mean? I have no idea what Tad Byrne is doing in that photo, because that looks like he needs help. Do you know what I mean?
It's the Marcus Rashford. It's the it's when he scored. He did we looked up some of the photos because it was my first podcast and we were speaking about Ulster, and we found out that some of the URC photos, like Mike Laurie and Balakoon, are holding like basketballs, and you're like, Mike Laurie, who's the best part of 5. I'm not exactly sure of his height, but he's quite small, holding a basketball. It
doesn't figure, does it?
No, it really doesn't. No.
All right. Well, I'm no doubt next week when Hugh is back, he will have a serious look at that, and Hugh will have a full understanding of where all of that information has come from, and he will completely justify why every one of those players are in there. But if I just prefer to take the mickey for a couple of minutes. So let's look at the final then. Let's run up by looking at the final. Leinster and Bulls. They say Croke Park. So what's the capacity in Croke Park, Adam?
Oh, hold on. I had it up on one of my
70?
things. It was like 80. It's 80, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I think it's
you might be
hold on.
right.
I'll look up because they've got a lot of just space. It's the Gaelic football, the National Gaelic Football stadium. So, if you don't know your rugby in Ireland, during the Lansdowne redevelopment, Croke Park was used as the Irish rugby headquarters, which was very big because it's the home of the Gaelic games. It's at 82,300 the capacity. And England, of course, played there. They played God Save the Queen, which was massive because, as I said, the Gaelic Football Association. It's got a very big emphasis in Irish rugby history due to what they would call it not being a Gaelic football game. But yeah, 82,300. I'd say they're probably using it because they want the Aviva pitch to rest for a little bit before the Lions match next week.
Adam, could I just jump in on the politics of it? Mary
Yeah.
McAleese, obviously the Irish president, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Late 90s, early 90s. And I remember Queen Elizabeth came over for a state visit, 2010, 2011 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And it was very political and ended up being a success. But she went to Croke Park at the invitation of the GAA, and I know there was a lot of. It was difficult. It was difficult to smooth the political pathway for that. But anyway, it's a very interesting backstory to how pivotal and the history behind Croke Park is to the Republican movement, I think. Is that fair to say? I think that's how it feels anyway.
It is. All the stands are named after very big prominent figures in Irish history that have fought for the Republic for what it is now. But yeah, I think having it at Croke Park is pretty cool. If they can sell it out, of course we've seen it sold out this year already. I would argue, with the basis of hindsight, would it make more sense putting a Lions game in Croke Park and the final be at the Aviva? Do you know what I mean? It would probably make more sense for that, for the spectacle of it. Um, but yeah, it's a big old stadium, 82,300. Like any team would struggle to sell that out. They're playing an NFL game there, I'm pretty sure as well. It shows how big it could be. But yeah, it's a big old stadium to fill within a week. Very big.
I think that's the challenge, isn't it? It's a week.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't give.
It,
If I was the Bulls, I'd be going, hey, all of you Ulster, Munster, Connaught fans, come and be a Bulls supporter for a day. We'll give you a
I
baseball cap or something. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
You
a
get
free shirt
all the Welsh
and a
region fans
handshake.
off to the. So you get all the Welsh region fans off onto the ferry at, Holyhead or Fishguard. Just get them over to Wexford or Rosslare, and then straight up the motorway to
Yeah, I
Croker.
mean,
Yeah,
we'd fill what 10,000 of
Imagine,
those seats.
imagine.
We put all four of us together, and I will just mention, young Ben, that you forgot Pembroke Dock, which is my hometown, which is also
right.
a ferry town. So
I see.
we're
I you can see the Irish Independent like headline Leinster call bullshit on fans traveling to URC. Like fans traveling to URC, but you can say like I just find it so mad. I think as well it shows a big issue with the URC and the planning of it all because when you look at like the Champions Cup and they would always say they would from the get-go be like, here's a stadium, we're gonna do it. I feel like a way that they could do it is that they do it north one year, south the other, no matter what the team, and they say it from the year. However, there is an issue there with South African fans traveling north, and it's two South African teams and two northern teams traveling south. It's just there needs to be a healthy middle somewhere, for that
I
type of
don't, I
thing to
don't, I don't
happen.
think it exists though. I don't think there is a healthy
No,
middle. I
there
think that's
probably
the
is.
problem.
There
Is that,
probably isn't.
and
Yeah.
I do agree with you. I think because it is the only competition that is geographically as wide as it is. Obviously, Super Rugby's doesn't have that width anymore because you don't have the Jaguares, you don't have the Sunwolves, and you don't have the South African teams there anymore. So it is just Pacific Island teams plus the four Aussie teams and the five New Zealand
Yeah.
teams. Is that if you go to a set format, you do end up having potentially a final that would be sparsely populated. If it was, say, Glasgow, Leinster, and it's in Cape Town, or it's in Dublin, and the Bulls play the Sharks, wherever it might be, is that having that planning ahead is you just know it's going to fall. It's going to fall against you. It's just going to be the way the
Yeah.
league falls. To have a
Yeah,
neutral venue, and unfortunately, there isn't a neutral venue that is equidistant. I can't think of anywhere really that's
It
sensible.
would be. There wouldn't
Yeah.
be anywhere really, would there?
The solution would be to not have it immediately, similar to the NFL, where the Super Bowl isn't immediately after the
Yeah.
It's
semifinal.
2 weeks.
That
Yeah,
would,
have a Pro
yeah.
Bowl, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then
But
also
with
the
this,
players can recoup a bit, that type of thing, because the Bulls are
but
now
with the
having to fly over.
but with the season structured the way it is,
Mm.
it's impossible. I don't know. There is one less weekend in the Six Nations next year because they're cutting it to 5 games over 6 weekends, aren't they? I
Yeah,
think there's
and
only
one of
one
them being on
gap.
a Thursday.
Yeah.
You know,
Whether there's a way of moving a week back and creating that buffer to then enable people to instead of all piling onto planes from Joburg up to Dublin, which probably will involve some
yeah.
kind of changeover somewhere, I'd suspect, whether it's in London or whether it's Amsterdam or Paris or elsewhere. It's tricky. It's tricky.
I'm looking up on Skyscanner. I'm saying for like next month in July from Dublin to Cape Town, and I'd say like if we said a month, you're probably talking. It hasn't really said anything yet because it's probably going to just break on me. But it's going to be something like a grand, let's just say, on how much. Yeah, sorry, there isn't any flights that match your filters. It's all like if the URC is, it is a big team-led league, um, and it's worked so well for so long, but we're starting to see a bit of an issue with attendances because it is being like this. It's just,
But
you know,
but it is the first final in the North out of the 4 seasons so
yeah.
far. So, there's
And
that difference there. This is a Northern Hemisphere final. The last 3 have been in
yeah,
Pretoria or Cape Town. So,
uh,
yeah.
the South do finals really well because you have that dramatics and you have the likes of Glasgow and Munster lifting trophies in South Africa, which is iconic for the league. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, and like Treviso in the Rainbow Cup, you have like those type of moments where you're like, yeah, people do forget that Treviso have won a trophy. Let's say it doesn't exist anymore, but Treviso have won a trophy in the last 5 years,
Yeah,
and
they
that's
beat the Bulls,
wild.
right? But what
Yeah,
was
they beat the Bulls. Yeah.
what was the venue for that game?
It was in Treviso.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
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 But
So
because was it empty
It
stadiums
was
because of the
it was
what?
COVID. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Oh, okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah. I had a thought. I forgot.
So let's talk rugby then about and not necessarily crowds and what have you. Just on a pitch, let's put it on a neutral pitch wherever it is. Who comes out of this on top out of Leinster and Bulls, and what are we hoping for? What would be the best kind of scenario, the most interesting game to watch, and what are we actually expecting to see? So, Mohammed, you get first crack on that. So, what would you hope to see this weekend, but what are you actually expecting to see?
Yeah, I hope the Bulls win, even though I don't support the Bulls and I have some misgivings about them. But people think we dislike Leinster. I kind of dislike the Bulls, but the last African team in the tournament. Um, and the stuff I dislike about was more off the field stuff. So, but they're definitely not necessarily favorites. Losing Hanekom doesn't help. They've already lost Ulrich Low earlier in the season. That's also a very bruising sort of guy who can play eighth man, play blindside, that type of thing. So it's be interested to see who from the Bulls sort of loose forward stock shifts over because they've got Nokia playing blindside right now. And they've got the 2 young guys at lock, Visa and Van Heerden. So yeah, I wonder who's gonna step up. We don't really know who's actually fit from the loose forwards, but they do have. I think maybe I don't know if they still have Carl Brink in the thing. So for me, loose forwards is a big deal. Uh, yeah, I think it's going to be fun to watch whatever happens. I don't think Leinster are going to run the Bulls over like they did Glasgow over the weekend. The interesting thing is that the Bulls are still vulnerable, just like the Bulls are vulnerable at fly off because their fly off is good and he's got 60 minutes in him, but he's also quite old and he's not necessarily going to be able to tackle that much. And now he's flying over. Whereas Leinster are vulnerable because their fly off has got a lot of potential and he probably be world class one day, but he's still coming through the system. So yeah, Leinster likely winners, Bulls hopefully. So we'll see what pans out. Hopefully the atmosphere is quite nice. I don't know if a lot of Bull supporters are going to be able to fly across. I will say though that the Shark supporters I knew that went to Loftus said there were a ton of Shark supporters in Loftus this weekend, filling up that 47,214. So it's not just that the Loftus supporters in the immediate area in Pretoria and maybe just down the road in Joburg who fill out the stadium. But the thing is that you get Shark supporters everywhere, just like you get Storm supporters everywhere. So that's a big deal. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'll kick it over to Adam now.
Yeah. As the Irish correspondent, I think I would say Leinster to win it, but I also want to see Leinster chase a game for once.
Yeah.
I want to see Leinster in an uncertain chase and actually fight for a win rather than switch off. Well, they didn't necessarily switch off against Glasgow, but I want a panicked Leinster. I want a sort of riled up chasing a game Leinster. Like I'm talking Bulls go 2 tries up and Leinster try and push through from there. It like I think that's the entertainment that we want from this game. I don't think Leinster have the Northampton game aside actually tried to like push and chase for a game. And I think that's what they sort of need to push on to actually win a trophy. Like they've put it on cruise control and still won games this season. The Bulls are very good. I would say that like the Bulls deserve to win it as well. I think we've got two very deserving teams, two of the best teams in the URC up against each other. But I fully believe if you have the likes of Sheenan motoring, you have RG Snyman coming off the bench, you've got loads of those players in that Leinster setup that know what it is, know what it's like to win still, even though you've got about 5 or 4 years without winning anything. There's a lot of players that want to make their mark. The story is like Prendergast, as Mohammed said, a lot of potential. His tackling is a bit off. Will Balls capitalize on that? That's also a key there. I would have the likes of like Marcel Coetzee in the loose forwards just battering down that door every time. I'd say it'd be a very good game. I want Leinster to chase it, to win it. I wouldn't want a 30 points by half time type of feeling, and I want them to chase the game. I want that to be the drama from it. I'd say Leinster by 10, between 3 and 10, I reckon. I'd say.
Like between 3 and 10, because that's
Yeah.
like there are 7 numbers in between
There's
3 and 10.
there is 7 numbers between that, but then again, like I just don't want it to be like 40-0, and you'd be like, you just see Jordy Barrett walk over with the trophy, going, I hope that money was spent well.
Okay, Ben, your thoughts on the final?
Yeah, I kind of concur with Adam. Really, I want to see lead changes. I do want to see Leinster chase a game. They haven't done that apart from the Northampton game, that semi-final a couple of weeks ago. I want it to be tetchy. I want it to be feisty. I want it to be just, I want to see just a really competitive final, because the last three have been competitive. They've all been within, a couple of points. I think off the top of my head, correct me if I'm wrong, Glasgow obviously, very close, because Bulls could nearly won it in the last minute of the last year's final. I just want to see, a game of chess where it plays out and there's different moves that each team are playing and they're front up against each other. I think the Bulls have got the potential to have the measure of Leinster. I think the key for Leinster is Gibson Park at 9. I think if he has a good game, I think Leinster win. If they can target Prendergast in the loose, I think Bulls may win that arm wrestle there. And it depends on if Leinster have any players coming back from yesterday, because I think they've got an entire back line that's out. Three lines are plenty that are out at the moment, and whether the Bulls can use that to advantage. But travelling's always going to be difficult. Leinster got home advantage, but I just want to see an atmosphere. That's it, really. I want to see what happened in Loftus yesterday, just to be replicated.
Yeah, to be fair, with Leinster traveling from South Dublin to North Dublin, they're going to that travel. To be fair, there's going to be some Leinster fans going, whoa. Not to speak ill on North Dublin. My mum is from South Dublin, so I'm gonna have to like push that in.
The more affluent part, to the best of my knowledge, isn't it? I think if you have South Dublin as a different view. But but I'm gonna say Leinster by 5. I think they've just got enough in the tank, and that ability to keep teams at arm's length and home advantage will count for something. It always does. Every game so far has been won by the home team, and I don't think that's going to change next weekend.
Now you see that, Adam, not between 0 and 50, 5. So
yeah, but I was just sort of like I couldn't think of like a score prediction. I just thought that Leinster would win it, but I wanted it in an entertaining fashion. So between 3 and 10 was my nice estimate.
That one is going to stick with me as one of the worst predictions that anyone has ever made.
I'll happy to have that accolade.
So for me, as a neutral, as a complete neutral with no foot in any camp, I just want to see a big game. I just want to see two teams going at each other, battering 10 bells out of each other, some fancy footwork in the back, some lovely passes, some lucky bounces. It just needs to be intense, and the crowd need to bring that. And that's my concern with this is that will that crowd atmosphere, if it's not there, how are the players going to react? I agree with everything that you guys have said. I would love to see Leinster having to really fight, having to really dig in, and the Bulls really putting them to the sword. And I don't know who is ref for this weekend, but you would not want to be the referee in the middle of that 79 minutes, and you're in front of the posts, and whoever needs a kick, and you're going like, was he off his feet? Do you know, you want to put that kind of pressure on that game where every single second is important. That's what I want to see. I want to feel part of that game. And I want to feel like, do you know what, that this is how the season should finish.
Yeah. Who do you think is going to get that? Holly Davidson or Adam Jones is going to be one, or Lee Evans would be the three, I would say, because obviously it can't be Andrew Brace. Frank Murphy hasn't refed all year. We had a chat about this. I don't know where Frank Murphy's disappeared to. Chris Busby's obviously, Irish and out of contention. South African refs are not in. Andrea Pardy refed yesterday, so I don't think he'd get it. So I think I'd say Holly Davidson's in for show. I think she might. I think she'll get it.
Yeah, I'd say Holly Davidson Holly Davidson definitely has the head for it as well. I'd say the pressure and stuff as well. I'd say she'd referee it very well. That's what I was thinking. As soon as we were saying about the referees, I'd say Holly Davidson's probably going to be the one to do it.
And that just
she's definitely gone above. Sorry, Lee, go on.
No, it throws a really interesting level into it of just how innovative and ahead of the game sometimes the URC is in these, in bringing, not just bringing in a token woman referee to do what. This is someone who's actually at the top of the game, and when we talk about who's the best referee for the best game in the season, that's the first name on everybody's lips. For me, that wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. That just wouldn't have been a thing even 5 years ago. So
yeah, agreed.
I'm really looking forward.
She's gone past Mike Adamson in terms of best Scottish referee under the SRU, I think. Yeah, but it'll be her, Adam Jones, or Craig Evans. I think it'll be one of those three. I think
won't be Craig Evans. If it's Craig Evans, maybe my foot is going straight through the screen. If it's Craig Evans, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think he's all right, to be honest. But, anyway.
Go wash your mouth out, young man. Wash your mouth out. I'm aware that, Mohammed, I didn't get a score prediction out of you, because I was going to come back round after and go, okay, let's have your score predictions. But then Adam went off on a crazy one and just threw it in there right at the start. And then Ben went, well, if Adam's thrown one in, I'm going to throw it in as well. So, Mohammed, your score prediction for the final?
I'd say Leinster by 7 points.
Yeah. Leinster by 7. Okay. I am going to go Bulls by 4, because I think just coming up, it's going to give them, when you throw in the fact that you've got to travel that far, it kind of gives you a bit more of a determination. Yeah, we're coming all this distance. We're playing in their backyard. We're going to show the fancy boys how to do it, sort of a thing. Yeah. And I really hope that both sides really go at it and give us a game where you guys can come back and talk to Hugh next week and go, see, this is what we were talking about last week, Hugh. You and your budgie smugglers. Right.
I do commend Leinster for when they do it. I mean, they've got quite a few injuries right now, but the fact is that their depth is in such a manner very similar to the Bulls that the guys who have to step up, they do actually step up quite well. So that's something that, I mean, on the Sharks message boards, the discussion is like, how do we get to the level of Leinster, Glasgow even, Bulls, Toulouse, Toulon, Bordeaux, etc. Yeah, so it's a lot of introspection going on from a lot of teams this week.
If I make a whole score prediction, could we say that Hughes shows up on Bungee Smugglers next week? Could we do like a Gary Lineker? So if I say 22-15 Leinster, and if that happens, we'll get Hugh on the group chat. If that happens, it has to happen, then yeah, I'd say that's pretty acceptable if he's missed this podcast.
Yeah. I'm just a little bit worried that does happen, and then I'm going to have to edit that pod and stare at
your discretion.
I'm not sure I've got enough emojis to cover that kind of place, mate. Right, gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure for me to sit in and enjoy your company this evening. It's going to be an absolute belter of a weekend next weekend. So all that's left for me to say is I hope everyone has a really great week and enjoy your rugby. Cheers for now, gents.
Cheers.